Have you guys seen these videos about people complaining video games aren't fun anymore? A couple years back, I found myself unfortunately sharing this sentiment. But as I dug a little deeper, I quickly realized what the problem was for me, and it's likely the same for you. After all,
you're nothing but an overgrown monkey!
But fear not, my fellow primates. In this video, I'll provide 3 possible reasons you might feel this way, as well as some practical steps to help you shed that monkey fur, dust off those Dorito crumbs, and get back into gaming, baby. Let's go! No, seriously, come on, you already clicked on the video. You have to come on this quest with me. Bro, you signed the contract.
What do you mean you're scared?
Relax, silly, it's not that dark out. Let's go. Yahoo! Alright, brief story time.
Stay a while and listen.
From my angsty teenage years and into my early 20s, I probably averaged about 4 to 6 hours of gaming a day.
I'm such a noob sometimes, Kyle.
This time was mostly split between single-player games and multiplayer games with friends. I'm an old man now, so this was during the PS2 era and onward. And I had all 3 consoles, so we're talking games like Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, Halo, Mario, Zelda, just about anything I could get my hands on. Multiplayer games were games like RuneScape, World of Warcraft, eventually League of Legends, you know, the classic toxic relationships that you get sucked into and can't pull away from, that steal away all your time, and you still for some reason look back on them fondly. Man, I miss those days.
I miss the idea of it. But not the truth. The weakness.
The way I used to play games back then was vastly different than how I do now with a family and a job. I really had no concept of time management or future planning because I'm an idiot, which brings me to possible reason number 1. FOMO and the attention economy. I made a whole separate video that goes deeper on the subject of FOMO and the attention economy if that's something that you want to check out. And it's not necessarily the problem for me, I'll get to that later in the video, but for many people, fear of missing out is certainly the source of the problem. Have you ever found yourself clicking on a video from a content creator just because it came out like 2 minutes ago?
Oh, hell yeah. Asmongold just released a brand new video for the 30th time on Diablo 4.
Bro, you stopped playing Diablo 4 like 3 days after launch. Several recent studies have linked FOMO, or fear of missing out, to negative health outcomes, including increased anxiety, depression, and stress. That's the scientific term, by the way, FOMO. Sounds very sciencey, yes?
No, there's no way that's correct.
I'm sorry, I was trying to impress you.
For example, a 2021 study found that FOMO is exacerbated by social media use, with depressive and anxious symptoms increasing the longer people spend on social media. Now, that's not to say that everyone who uses social media has a mental health disorder. That only applies to TikTok and Twitter, or X-Men, or Muskmen, or whatever it's called nowadays. The point is, it's that nagging feeling I'm sure we've all experienced at some point where you feel like you're either not playing the right games, or you're not keeping up with your friends, and not keeping up with the gaming trends, and the gaming world is just passing you by. Another related point is the idea of the attention economy. When I was in my peak gaming years, I didn't really spend time on other forms of media, with the occasional binges of manga or anime being the main exception. Nowadays, in addition to the sheer volume of video game releases, people have to contend with a never-ending buffet of content in the form of constantly released YouTube videos or other
social media posts on literally
every topic you could ever possibly be interested in. Hell, even crap you're not really interested in. This has nearly 150 million views, by the way. There have been times when I've spent more time watching these content curation type videos about the best video games of the year or whatever, and putting them on my Steam wish list than actually spending time gaming. Manga and anime certainly didn't just leave. Netflix and all these other subscription services are constantly vying for our attention, rewiring our brains to crave novelty and excitement, constantly trying to bombard you with your next dose of dopamine.
Stop it. Get some help.
Which brings me to the next possible reason, and the main problem for me personally, but first, a couple practical tips to keep gaming fun. Tip number 1, play video games on a timed basis. Set a timer for 2 hours or 11 hours or whatever it's gonna be, and just sit and game the way we all used to as kids. Treat it like the sacred ritual that it is, without watching the clock, without getting distracted by all the internet noise outside of the game. And if you have kids and they start yelling at you because they're hungry, just gently remind them of the ritual, show them the timer, and tell them to get the f out of here! It's video game time! I used to be able to immerse myself in a game and live in the moment, so to speak, or whatever the gaming equivalent of that is, without rushing through it in an attempt to get through my 100+ game backlog. Now, obviously, this shouldn't come at the expense of things you should genuinely be getting done, like laundry or whatever. And this can be especially difficult with multiplayer games, even more so if you frequently game with friends who hop on the current flavor of the month bandwagon with games like Helldivers 2, Pal World, or Elden Ring Night Rain when that comes out. The thing is, these kinds of games are constantly coming out these days. They're not really going anywhere. Just tell your stupid friends to make a new character when you hop on, and they can pretend to be a little noob like you. Practical tip number 2, don't feel obligated to start a new game just because everyone else is playing it, or to finish a game that you don't enjoy. If you're not intentional about the games you play and the time you spend gaming, you're no better than one of these little Pikmin just following the crowd. I love these little bastards. I used to think that once I started a game, I had to see it through to the end. I'm not exactly sure where this comes from, but perhaps because I'm frugal, it's some kind of sunk cost fallacy kind of thing where I feel like I have to get my money and or time's worth. A lot of game developers these days certainly don't seem to be in a rush to finish their games, so why should you be? Nowadays, I can pretty quickly get a feel for whether I'll like a game, and even if it's universally well loved, it might just not be for me. A recent example of this, and please don't hate me for this, was Slime Rancher. Overwhelmingly positive on Steam with over 100,000 reviews. I felt like I just had to play it given its success. Kind of like when you feel obligated to watch a YouTube video just because it has the amount of views that it has. As if by not playing it, I would be missing out on some absolute must-play gaming experience. But personally, I'm not really into these type of cozy games, so I picked it up, I played it for about an hour, and had a little fun, and I moved on. I feel the same way about books, anime, movies, etc. If I can tell it's not my jam pretty early on, I'll skip it and allocate that time towards something else. You could always return the book, refund the game, or consider it as having supported the creator, and off you go on your quest, little Frodo. Alright, main point number 2, dopamine and addiction. During my sophomore year of high school, life was pretty balanced. I would be bored out of my mind for about 8 hours at school, go home, work out, which meant exclusively bench press and curls. I mean, look at these legs. Don't you look away. You look at them! I would eat like 2 top ramens and a Mr. Peace pizza or a couple Hot Pockets, then sit down for like a 6-hour WoW session with the boys.
What's that, Leroy? You were just stupid as hell.
At least I have chicken.
Funnily enough, I feel like it actually was slightly more balanced than it is now, at least with respect to this first part of the equation. You see, this crosses this crosses here, carry over the 1. See? Balance. I'm like the Dalai Lama over here. Actually, no. He's a questionable character. I think I'm gonna have to settle for Buddha or Frisk or something. Now, obviously, this isn't what balance looks like, but if you fast forward to now, I'm no longer in school, I love my job, and just generally spend more time on this side of the equation. The missing piece here is boredom. We literally never allow ourselves to be bored these days in the way that I was during my school years, which made the WoW sessions more enjoyable, which made school more intolerable, which made the WoW sessions... I don't even let myself be bored on the damn toilet. People used to have books or magazines in there, which was weird then too, in my opinion, but you can't even take a dump without scrolling around and getting your phone fix. The forms of media that we have access to are inherently more stimulating than the ones we had when I was a kid growing up in the SNES era. And while not necessarily as stimulating as something like TikTok, even the classic RuneScapes and World of Warcrafts of yesteryear were incredibly addicting. That's like a friggin' part-time job, dude. Think about classic WoW where it took like 30 minutes to run across Durotar to get to Orgrimmar. This is so stimulating, bro. I think I might have a seizure.
So let's talk about dopamine.
Andrew Huberman is one of the more prominent voices at the moment on the topic of dopamine and addiction.
Addiction is a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure. So oftentimes what will happen is the person only has excitement and can achieve dopamine release to the same extent doing that behavior and not other behaviors.
Now, this is true both with respect to gaming as well as other forms of highly rewarding / stimulating media. I'd be curious to see what types of games have been studied in this way, as I suspect a huge discrepancy between online competitive multiplayer games, for example, and the old Nintendo classics. When I was in the state of mind when I briefly shared the sentiment of games aren't fun anymore, I remember I would load up something juicy like Vampire Survivors and throw on a YouTube video or a podcast in the background, as if Vampire Survivors isn't already stimulating enough, what with its gambling mechanics and flashy lights. Bringing Las Vegas to your monitor every time you fire it up. This is so stimulating, bro, I might have a seizure. It doesn't take a neuroscientist to see this as a recipe for hijacking your dopamine circuitry and making not only gaming, but a whole host of other activities feel pretty boring and unrewarding in comparison.
They will stop getting dopamine release from that activity as well, and then they drop into a pretty serious depression.
Here's another take from Dr. K, a Harvard-trained psychologist who specializes in gamer mental health and the person from whom I'm stealing my practical tips for this.
Other things that you would normally find fun start to become less fun because your dopamine tolerance is so high and you've hit this point of dopamine exhaustion.
He goes on to explain many of the gamers he works with report that the games they used to enjoy are no longer fun. I found it funny that many of the 1,200 plus comments on this YouTube video have to do with League of Legends specifically.
We need to start engaging in serotonergic activities.
The best ones here are going to be things like intense exercise, particularly outdoors. That's much better. But also things like reading, yoga, meditation, chores around the house, etc. Andrew Huberman often brings up the importance of getting sunlight within the first hour of waking. This is beneficial for everything from improving vitamin D levels, balancing dopamine and serotonin, and establishing a healthy circadian rhythm leading to better sleep. It's honestly a powerful life hack that just about every human being used to do well before we could just wake up and reach for our dumb phones. If you're rich, I guess you just put the sun in your frickin' bathroom, dude.
Do a dopamine detox. I think that resetting all of those neurotransmitters and neurochemicals, I've seen good progress happen in about 2 weeks for most people.
Now, a dopamine fast or a dopamine detox is just really a catchy title, not exactly how it works. But regardless, when I was younger, I certainly never felt as though gaming or most other activities were no longer fun, despite putting in enough hours to effectively qualify as an addict. This is likely due to the fact that I was always very physically active, had a solid several hours of soul-crushing boredom at school, and I certainly didn't have a cell phone to reach for to quell said boredom. Obviously, I'm being facetious about this being balanced, but imagine the same scenario for a moment. Now, detract school from the situation, skip out on some of the exercise, and add in a cell phone and scrolling behavior. And let's not forget, play the same stupid game every day, and it's not difficult to see why gaming could quickly become less enjoyable. This is one of, if not the most viewed video on this topic on all of YouTube. He made a follow-up video talking about how a very simple fix led to him resolving the issue for himself.
I overcame that feeling by deciding to actually accept variety into the games I play and branch out across new franchises and games I wouldn't have considered touching before.
One of the things I think I unknowingly did well when I was younger was have a good mix of single-player games that have a clear end with online competitive games that just keep you playing until you stop. These online competitive games are the clear culprit in inducing feelings of burnout compared to single-player experiences. A good friend of mine got burnout on gaming a couple years ago and just stopped playing altogether. He started reading books like physical tomes like Lord of the Rings and nerd stuff. He's back to gaming now, thankfully, but for a moment there, he was like happy and at peace just reading books and going for walks and stuff. Them's be scary times, man. Burnout is real. But it's interesting when you hear people complain about being burnt out on gaming, you find out that they fire up the same League of Legends or the same Overwatch day after day. These games are fun, don't get me wrong, but how about some gosh darn variety? Here's a brief list of indie games you should check out if this is you. There are many more, this is the short list. Practical tip number one, I've already said it several times at this point, limit the amount of competitive multiplayer games you play. Obviously, you kind of have to get on the grind to get good at these multiplayer games and keep up with your friends, but if it stops being fun, what's the point? Especially because they're team-driven, and there's nothing more tilting than having the best game of your life and losing regardless because you're playing with the worst human excuses for bots in existence. Practical tip number two, develop a gaming rotation that incorporates games from various genres to spice things up a bit. Forcing yourself to play a completely new style of game can be challenging at first, but maybe that's just the challenge your monkey brain needs to break out of the monotony of the new FIFA or Call of Duty game people sink time into every year. Gaming is clearly still fun. It's the largest entertainment industry in the world for a reason. And there are stories told in games that simply can't be told in other forms of media due to the unique advantage of being interactive. Just stop playing all the wrong games. Only play the ones I tell you are good. Don't get your recommendations from game journos and big YouTubers that have millions of subscribers. Ooh, look at my diamond play button. Now hit subscribe and help me get that play button, please. Before the next big Steam sale, please.